they're just taking advantage of them at this point. So you need to call it out for what it is, and you really need to set some boundaries, or your marriage is probably not going to last this.
Your husband leaves you and doesn't pay the mortgage and drains the savings, and you know, we're a stay-at-home mom and wife, so like your career prospects is just not there.
You didn't start this to get thousands of dollars in credit card debt, but you are where you're at right now. And the thing is, you know that you can't get yourself out of it.
Even just in the most basic sense, like I'm gonna borrow money to go to this place and there's no expectation that I pay it back if I just ignore it. I don't know how you come to that conclusion. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Lauren and I are back for our weekly episode where we talk all things money. Now, Lauren, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this a few times, but my wife and I have been renovating our house probably for the last 6 weeks or so. Basically like every weekend, and then like Saturday and Sunday all day, and then evenings as many times as I can get out there. And there was a point I think it was on Sunday, it might have been Saturday, where it was just not a win that day. Like most of the days it had felt like progress, but we had the plumber in, and like one of the water supply lines that he installed for the new shower, because we ripped out both the showers, started leaking, and then just a few other little things like were going wrong that day. And what started off as, oh yeah, we're just going to put new flooring and new paint, turned into new flooring, new paint. We ripped out some walls. We totally ripped out the bathroom. So there's literally just a hole in the ground. And at one point I was like, oh my gosh, did I just like bite off more than I can chew? And it was like, you know, compounding on like the day didn't go well. There wasn't a whole lot of progress. We ordered the wrong tub. Like it was just a whole mess. And then I was like, oh my God, like I'm kind of regretting this. And it was just like a split second of like, this sucks. But I don't know. It was just, luckily like the day ended off a little bit better, but it was just, not a fun experience, just to feel like almost like a little bit of like dread and regret of like, did we kind of mess up here? Did like, you know, should we have left one of these bathrooms intact or whatever? Cause we also are still on a timeline.
Yeah. Nick, you and I could not be like more opposite. I would never, ever do that. Ever. I would never rip apart a house and try to put it back together. Does not sound like something fun to me. As you know, we're buying a new construction home. So we've been picking out like some of the different like foundational things and like different setups we want. So like that's my sort of thing, going to the office and like writing all that stuff down. Yeah. But that's as much kind of construction as I'm going to do. I really don't. I would definitely have regret if I was doing that, because you're just like, oh, this will be fun. This will be a project. And then like you uncover something else and then something else. And you're like, what have I got myself into? So better.
Yeah, that's one of the issues, because we knew that there was termite damage, and so we're like, all right, we have to take out one portion of a wall, and then it turned into like it's like a shared wall where like on one side is the laundry room and kitchen, on the other side are 2 bathrooms of that wall. So we were like, all right, we got to take out, you know, basically the whole wall on one of those 2 sides, and we don't want to touch the kitchen. So that's why we ripped out both bathrooms to replace some of the termite damage. But yeah, there was several times over the last few weeks where I'm like, man, I know why Lauren picked the route that she picked, because I would love to just open a catalog and be like, yep, want that, that, and that. Instead, I'm like, cool, I opened the Home Depot app, let me order it, pick it up, and then I got to install it. And then we got to kind of buy all the right tools or hire someone who's going to help us. So it's a mess. But no, right now, I think we're still feeling good. But there was a low point this weekend where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm starting to regret this. But we're back up. So, but anyway, yeah. Anyway, now on the topic of regrets, today we are talking about financial regrets. And more specifically, what happens when you make a decision that can completely wreck your finances. And so to kick us off, Lauren, I have this video that I wanted to play for you and get your reaction to.
Tell us your biggest money mistake you've ever made.
Biggest money mistake would have to be the investment in the solar panels.
Oh, what'd you spend on the solar panels?
It's $36,000.
On a loan?
Even, yeah.
Nothing down?
Nothing down.
I would say buying a brand new car.
Ooh, what was it?
It's a 2015 Grand Cherokee.
Brand new Jeep Grand Cherokee. And you took out a loan for this? How big was the loan?
The full amount.
I think the biggest money mistake was financing a bed.
Oh, a bed?
Yeah.
How much did you finance?
$7,000-8,000. Yeah, so it was.
That thing make you coffee? I mean, what are they putting in that? What was your biggest money win so far?
Paying off over $200,000 in debt.
Whoa! What kind of debt was $200,000?
Everything under the sun.
You had it all.
Student loans, cars, consolidation, credit cards.
We paid off $18,000 while I started a new career.
I think our biggest win would be the fact that we're on the same page. There for a while, I would say we were on 2 totally different pages, and that's really stressful.
It sounds like the biggest regrets are either things that cost you a lot of money or things that you borrow a lot of money for. Like all of those seem to be like borrowing for debt.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, cars obviously go down in value, things happen to them and you're still paying them off. Solar panels is a really good one. And that's something I'll never fully understand unless you're staying in the house for like the rest of your life because they are so expensive. Like how long is it going to take you to break even with your electric bills? You know what I mean? Like that would be a long time for me because if you're paying $36,000, like how much is your electric bill that's going to finally like break even and be worth it for you? You know what I mean? So I think that's where people get like sucked in. They're like, oh, that maybe was a bad decision.
That's the perfect way to look at it because I'm like my electric bill, and granted we're still in our apartment, is like $150 a month. So like let's say it was $250 a month.
Yeah.
I'm like for $36,000 that's going to take you years to pay off. Like to break even, and then finally years down the road you're recouping some of that loss and actually saving money. But I feel like in that moment they're just like, "Oh yeah, it's going to save me, $200 a month," but now their payment is probably even more than that every single month.
Yeah, I just did the math on it. So it looks like it would take you like 240 months to like to break even. So that's 20 years if you do the math on it. So like I said, if it's good if you, potentially it's good if you keep the house. I don't know. People live and die by them. Actually, the house that we live in has solar panels. I think our electric bills are like super, super small in the summertime. This is just a house we're renting, so we didn't pick them out, but I did find it odd to get them in the Chicago area because it's cloudy and snowy for 8 months out of the year. So anyway,
the only like justification I could see is, and I think this exists, I could also be making it up, but like where you could have a solar panel that like charges a battery and then it almost acts as a generator when your house, like if you lose electricity, especially like us here in Texas, it's like the power grid's not the best. We've already had a few power outages. I'm like, that's the one case that you could kind of make for it because then you can kind of factor in the cost for a generator, like a backup generator. But other than that, like if someone was like, yeah, would you trade $36,000 for $250 a month or $300 a month? I'm like, no, that's just not worth it at all.
Right. Yeah. And now the next one, the financial regret of buying a new Jeep. Maybe I'd feel that way about a Jeep, but we've actually bought 2 brand new cars. My husband's Forester and then my CRV. But honestly, I feel like the past few years have been a little bit different, especially when we bought my husband's Forester. We bought it new. It was $1,500 more than the used version that was like 3 years older and smelled like smoke inside. So that was a no-brainer decision. I'd say my CRV was a little bit more expensive, but we did buy that new as well. We had the money for it, and I'm going to drive that thing until it goes into the ground, or I get my Lexus someday, but we'll see.
And to be fair, those are like sensible cars, like Subaru and is it Toyota or Honda?
Honda. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean those cars are going to last you 200,000-300,000 miles. I think Subarus are like the highest rated cars for staying on the road, like for years after. And I'm sure Honda and Toyota are like right there with it. The amount of money people borrow to get new cars is just insane. I'm like the amount of money you're going to pay in interest on that loan or whatever your monthly payment is. I'm like that could be the difference between you having a good retirement or not, or you being able to put your kids into college or not. Because some people are having like $1,000 per month car bills, like loans on their cars. And I'm like $1,000 a month. And if you kind of keep that, right, you get sucked into that trap of leasing a car. You get a new one every 3 years, or you buy it and then you continuously buy cars. Yeah. Like, man, that's, $1,000 per month. That's a lot of money that could go a long way to be investing that money or saving that money for your kids or whatever it is, Yeah.
And I think when you first like sign up for the car, $1,000 a month, you're like, I can do that, make it work. But then you're like 12 months in and you're like, the freshness is wearing off. It doesn't smell good in here anymore. Yeah. This sucks. I have to do this for the next 7 years because now we're getting like 7-8 year terms for these cars. So,
it's crazy.
Yeah, I know. I see where they're coming from on that point, but I'd say let's jump into this first one here. So this is kind of switching gears a little bit, but this first point says, I'm 55 with no savings, no retirement, and no home ownership. I'm terrified. 10 years ago, I was married, a stay-at-home wife and mom for 15 years. When my husband abruptly walked out, long story short, he planned for months to leave me for another woman. I was shocked to learn that he had stopped paying the mortgage and drained our savings, leaving me with our children in a foreclosed home. I received nothing in the divorce as there was no assets left. The past decade has been rough, and I've struggled to get by. I bring home a measly $2,500 per month. I have no idea how to get out of this mess, and I'm terrified about my financial future. I want to own a home again somehow, and I know I need retirement savings, but at this point, I don't know what's feasible. Where do I start?
Man, that's like getting kicked while you're down. Like seriously, like your husband leaves you and doesn't pay the mortgage and drains the savings, and you know were a stay-at-home mom and wife, so like your career prospects is just not there. You know, I imagine she was probably a stay-at-home mom and wife for several years, you know, so it's just like, how do you get back into the job market after that? Like that's a rough situation. Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't know, this person is 55. So it's like, that's a later stage to be starting. But I understand wanting to own a home again. That probably felt, like you had this home, you had a family, and now you have nothing. But I feel like you do have a new opportunity here. And I think that comes from, it doesn't come from owning a home. It comes from standing on your own 2 feet and doing this on your own. Now, as to like, where do you start with this? I feel like I said, I don't know if owning a home is in the picture at this point. But just, I don't know. I think just the very basic of like starting from the very beginning, I don't know what this person like has left over, because it says they're living in a foreclosed home. I'm guessing they had to move out. They're renting probably, but I don't know what they were left over with. I don't know how that works in divorce. Like if there's debt, obviously he probably has it if it's in his name, but I don't know if she has any debt or anything like that, but probably walking like what we talk about all the time, like the different steps of how to get there, and just start there. It's going to have to be basic, but knowing that you're on your own 2 feet again is, I think, you're out of this relationship with a person who doesn't deserve you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you kind of mentioned it, but I think a big part of this is this person's going to have to re-envision what their retirement is going to look like. If they're 55, they're barely scraping by $2,500 a month. They don't own a home. It doesn't sound like they have any retirement savings, or probably any other savings for that matter. Like your retirement's just going to be different, And so what I think you could do to set yourself up for the best possible retirement, given your current situation, is how do we get your income up? That way, if we can focus, because right now the biggest issue, like obviously is number one is time, but number two is you have a huge income problem. Like $2,500 a month, does not get you far in any part of the country, So, I think if this person can focus on how do I increase my income from 2,500 to 3,500, then to 4,500, then to 5,500. Now you're starting to make 60K a year. Like, all right, now we can actually start to have some wiggle room in terms of paying the bills and putting some money aside. But I mean, unless this person gets a massive increase in their pay, they're probably going to continue working for the next, for the foreseeable future into their retirement. And so they gotta just shift what retirement is going to look like in their mind, I think.
Yeah. It's probably not going to be like sitting on a yacht somewhere, and they know that. Yeah. It's probably, and the thing is, like, they haven't been working, so they haven't been paying into Social Security. So I would assume whatever they're getting is probably very small at this point. No, like you said, it's just going to have to look different, whether that's, always working some sort of part-time job, or working the job that you can get with like your skill set at this point, because you were off for so long. And then maybe doing some things on the side. Obviously you were a stay-at-home mom. I'm sure you're good at a few things like that, like whether it's watching kids in the evening, you can make a lot of money doing that stuff on the side. Or if you're a good baker or something like that, like there's things that they can do to sort of supplement this that might even roll into their retirement too, or turn out to be a really awesome side business. You never know.
Yeah, it's just so it sucks to see people who are in situations like this, and like this is kind of related to what I was talking about earlier. But like I go into Home Depot like several times a week at this point. There's a few people in there who are noticeably into their like 60s, maybe even 70s, and I'm like, I don't think you're working it at Home Depot as like helping people check out in your 60s and 70s. Either you really love Home Depot or you really need the money, and it's just tough to see people who you can tell they even have a hard time kind of moving around. And that's definitely not, my dad's in his 70s, he moves around great, so it's definitely not everyone who's in their 60s and 70s, but you can tell like these people, like they don't have it doesn't seem like they have enough money to take care of themselves, where they wouldn't need to work. And so they do need to work. And if they're working, at a place like that, and that's probably a similar situation to this person, where if they're making $2,500 a month, like it's probably not a job that's very high, like a high skill job, which is going to pay them well. And so they're probably on their feet a lot all day. Like as they get older, it's just not going to be a fun situation. And so, if this person uses really probably the next 5 years, how can I really start to increase the income? Like, and whether that means I have to learn a new skill or take some of the skills that, like you said, like if you were really good at baking, which I imagine being a stay-at-home mom and wife, you probably did your fair share of baking, maybe that's something that you could turn into like a side business or something like that that's going to help you generate more income.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing is like owning a home is not, I think we tie it so closely to like our worth and like how worthy we are and like how stable we are and financially ahead. And it's like, that's probably not in your future at this point, at least where you're at right now. Let's probably focus on retirement a little bit more than owning a home, because even if you're renting, it's a safe space over your head. It's your landlord can take care of things that go wrong. The last thing you want to do is buy a home, then things go wrong, and then you're really in a really bad situation. So that's kind of where I'm at there. One thing I thought about on the side here as we were reading through this is really nothing to do with, where they go from here, but just calling out, it doesn't seem like her and her ex-husband ever communicated about the finances, even though she was, just because she was staying at home, not working, seems like he was sort of running the show. And then because she said she was shocked to learn that he had stopped paying the mortgage. So I think that's a really big learning lesson for a lot of people out there. Even if you are staying at home, if you're not bringing in an income, you should still have, equal say in the finances, or at least be looking that over every single month, because this is exactly what you don't want to happen, right? Because this person was blindsided because they just didn't know.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, if you're a stay-at-home parent, that doesn't mean that you're less involved in the finances because you're not bringing home like a quote unquote an income, right? Like you're still financially providing for the family by taking care of some of the largest expenses, which is going to be childcare, cooking, cleaning for the home, like taking care of the home. Basically, that's a huge financial burden that if you choose to work instead of stay home, whichever parent it is, like you got to weigh, is that going to make financial sense? Because it's just going to cost money. Am I going to make more than that? But in terms of like avoiding this, moving, like for someone who's in a similar situation, like you got to be involved in the finances. Like it doesn't matter if both people are making the income or only one person is making the income. Like both of you should know, how do I get into all the accounts? How do I make sure that all the bills are getting paid? Because in a similar situation, what if what if her husband had died, right? And it's not such a obviously it's still a very sad situation, but it's not such a kick me while I'm down situation where the husband leaves and destroys her life. It's like, no, like, like now your primary source of income, your husband is gone. Like, what do you do in that situation? It could have ended up in a similar place, even though the situation was drastically different. Like, I think that's why it's so important too. Like if one person's going to stay home, that the person who's providing the income, like they still take advantage of ways to contribute to the other spouse's retirement. Like especially like you could still invest in your spouse's Roth IRA, for example. As long as one of you has an earned income, you can still invest inside of a Roth IRA. So finding ways to make sure that like if anything were to happen, that both people have retirement savings, access to all the accounts, like all of that is still in place no matter what.
Yeah, and I think I wish that this person had asked this like 10 years ago, because this is when this happened, and that they've sort of been struggling for the past 10 years, because I think first off, 10 years later, they're still in this like negative sort of like mindset. And I feel like that is also impacting it too, because you just feel like so defeated and you have not, you feel like you still can't even stand on your own 2 feet. So I feel like, changing that mindset around a little bit and be a little bit more empowered, and maybe have thought about that, 10 years ago, how can you increase your income to put towards your retirement savings and whatever else you want to own, maybe would have been a better idea. But I'm glad they're talking about it now. And 55 is still relatively young in the grand scheme of things. So they can do some things to move forward. But I really think they just need to start, leaning into it a little bit more. I made it through this and finished raising my kids or whatever. And now this is how I'm going to handle this. So
that's almost the story you'd expect to hear 10 years later, not this story, which that's like you said, when something like this happens, you got to start thinking about it as quickly as possible. But why don't we jump into the next one? So this person wrote, "We've poured so much money into my in-laws' terrible financial situation. I've recently come to the bitter realization that their problems result from poor decisions and bad behavior on their part, and no amount of money will ever dig them out of that hole. This is a fight my husband and I frequently have. His mom has a good job, but is a chronic overspender and needs our help to pay her bills. No matter how many times we talk about it, he just can't seem to say no. I know things happen, but I can't imagine how humiliated I would be asking my adult children for money at that age. Parents are supposed to be able to cushion their kids if they fall financially, not the other way around. Many of them don't feel shame in asking and think of it as reparations for raising children that they chose to bring into this world.
Ew, I hate that. You brought me into this world, now I have to help you. That's insane. Anyway, this screams, y'all need some boundaries ASAP. I personally would never let this happen. Like, I feel like like my husband and I would end up in therapy. We're pretty on the same page on that kind of thing. Now, there's times where I'll help my family in certain situations, but not really because they're asking me for help, more so because I want to be doing that. I do feel bad for people in this situation because you do sort of feel obligated, like it's my parents. However, their parents are not learning anything from this. They're just taking advantage of them at this point. So you need to call it out for what it is, and you really need to set some boundaries, or your marriage is probably not going to last this.
Yeah, I'm much more concerned. Like, I'm less concerned about having to give the in-laws money, and I'm more concerned that they've talked about it and the husband just can't seem to say no. Like, that part that I'm like, oh, that, like, I don't know. Like, to me, it's like, how do you do that? You know, like, you two are supposed to be a team. You two are supposed to be on the same page. Obviously, that's not the case for most relationships, considering how many of them, you know, marriages do end in divorce. But like, in my mind, like, you marry that person, that's your number one now. You know, that's your number one. And then that's where your obligations lie. And then you two have to make decisions for how you kind of interact with whatever might be going on around you. And if that's, hey, we need to help out one of the parents needs to be helped out. It's like, all right, how do we make that decision together? But yeah, it's that to me is the more concerning part, is that you two don't seem to have clear understanding of like, hey, these are the values. These are the ways we're going to interact with our money when it comes to like giving it to other people.
Yeah, and I would say there's probably a lot more people than not that are in these types of situations, like really toxic family situations.
Yeah.
My initial thought here is like, you know, if your parents are okay asking you for, you know, money, then they're going to have to be okay with, you know, and here's the thing, maybe you can start like lightly. Hey, I can offer you this amount of money for this if you're going to sit down with me and look over your finances together. You know, which they're going to push back on because they don't want you to see how terrible of a situation they're in and how poor their spending habits are. But that can almost be like hey, I'll do this for you if you do this for me. And if there's no agreement there, then maybe you don't do that. You know, it reminds me of that situation we talked about, I don't know when, on one of the episodes about, it was like a parents that were wanting like the brother to take care of his brother and like instead of them taking care of him. And it was crazy because it was like, you're the one that gave birth to this kid and you want me to help him now. So, but this just seems, I mean, this is very odd that parents would do this to their kids. I actually hate that. You know, like you said, it's a reparations for bringing kids into this world, which is insane, but
it's a crazy concept.
Yeah. But I'm going to set some boundaries there first and foremost. And really, I think the husband and the wife need to like work this out together. And then be willing to put some things in place here, because obviously they're never going to change because you keep giving them money and keep giving them money. So set some boundaries there. Okay, we'll help you with this one thing, but we're going to take a look at this and we're going to help you guys set up a budget so we don't have to continue to do this, because we cannot continue to do this. Our finances are, you know, in trouble, even if they're not, whatever. We can't continue to support you, you know?
I love that. And my wife and I have kind of like, and I honestly, I think this happened because of like, we love to like when we're making dinner or watching or washing the dishes, we love to put on like Caleb Hammer episodes, because at this point, those are just so entertaining.
Yeah.
But I think it was because we had watched the video, we came to this like agreement with each other. Like, all right, if anyone in each other's families like ever need money, you know, obviously we can talk about how that will look, how much to give or whether we give or not, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it would always come with the understanding like, hey, it's not just the money. If we're going to give you this money and expect nothing in return, you have to let us help you with the finances a little bit, you know, because I don't want to like just pour money into a hole in the ground and never see it go anywhere. If I'm going to help you financially, I also want to be able to help you like understand how to manage the finances. And I'm definitely like the nerdier one when it comes to finances, but like, dude, my wife she's so involved in the money. She could tell you how to make a budget. She could tell you how we run all our finances to where it could be helpful for someone who has no clue where they're starting with their money, so like to that level, like I think, in my mind, like if I'm going to give someone money, it's going to come with the understanding like it's money, and also I want to help you get out of this and the part that's really going to help you is understanding how to move forward with this with your finances.
Yeah. And also, no is a complete sentence, so you can just say no as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure these people are very toxic. They're going to manipulate you. They're going to guilt trip you. Maybe won't speak to you for a little bit. Hey, maybe that'll be a nice thing. But yeah, you can do that as well. But you got to set some boundaries soon, or you're going to continue to give your parents money. And obviously they have terrible spending habits and they can't figure out their own stuff. So.
All right, taking a quick break from today's episode, Lauren and I have some exciting news we'd like to share with you. If you're feeling stuck with your finances and don't know where to start, we have you covered with our one-on-one financial coaching.
These are no strings attached coaching sessions that you can sign up for today. No ongoing commitment. You simply book a session whenever you need one.
Each call is 90 minutes, and by the end of it, you'll have a clear budget to work with and a solid plan to start paying off your debt. Plus, we'll make sure you walk away with some awesome tools to keep you on track, including our budget dashboard and expense tracker, as well as our debt payoff optimizer.
And the best part, you'll get to work with both of us on the call. Together, we'll help you develop the best possible strategy forward, answer your questions, and make sure you feel confident about managing your money.
So if you're ready to get a handle on your budget and kickstart your financial journey forward, check out the link in the show notes to book your first session.
We can't wait to get started with you. Now, back to the episode. This one says, when I was 20, my mom told me my student loans would just go away if I couldn't afford to pay them. So I just never did. After about a year after graduating, I got a call from my loan servicer informing me that my debt would go into collections if I didn't pay next month's minimum. I don't know why I took her advice because she's never been good with money. It's now been over a decade and I'm still trying to pay off the interest. The worst part is I might have chosen something different if I knew I'd end up with tens of thousands of dollars of debt. I just can't seem to make any meaningful progress.
I don't know how, like, as an 18-year-old who applied for college, got accepted into college, like, I get it. Like, like you're 18, you still don't know anything about the world, really, even though you're legally an adult. But it's just hard for me to believe that some people are so naive to where, oh, yeah, I'm going to just sign on to borrow money, even just in the most basic sense. Like, I'm going to borrow money to go to this place, and there's no expectation that I pay it back if I just ignore it. I don't know how you come to that conclusion.
Nick, I feel like that was sort of me. I don't know about you, but I was a first gen college student. My sister went to college before me, but our parents did not go. So we really didn't fully understand it. I will say I did not understand loans back in the day when I was 18, when I first went to college. I actually went to a college away from my house for the first year. And then I quickly realized that like it was expensive to stay in the dorms there. So I did move back home because there was like a little college in our town. And then I could transfer to the other campus. But I didn't fully understand it either until I started seeing some of the numbers. I also think what saved us was like my mom was like a lower income single mom. So I got a lot of help from the state and the federal government for school. So that helped me because like had I not had that, I probably would have been in a lot more student loan debt than I was. But yeah, I didn't know that, Nick. So like, I totally understand it when you come from, a family that doesn't have that knowledge and you're 18 years old, you don't have that knowledge either. So I just don't think, my mom never said they'll just go away. You can afford it. That's not even logical, honestly. But I can definitely see how people get themselves in this situation, especially being so young.
Yeah. And what I think, happened here is that they've, and I was watching another video too, where someone was talking about how they borrowed for their student loans, like 80 grand or something at a 7% interest rate. And, however many years later, they've already paid $90,000 back, but they still have a substantial amount of the actual principal to pay back. Yeah. And I think that's another part that just comes from a lack of understanding of how loans work, especially when you get into the higher percentages like 7, 8, 9, 10% or above. It's like if you're making just the minimum payments, like that's the thing that they almost don't tell you. When you go to your loan servicer website, like you just see, here's your monthly payment, and that's kind of it. And you can still look into it, but the amount of people who don't is the majority for sure. But you could see the amount of your monthly payment, how much is going towards the principal versus how much is going towards the interest. For some of these loans that are 7, 8, 9% or even more, like credit cards, the vast majority of it is going towards interest. And so you could be paying $500 a month and $50 might be paying down the principal and $450 a month is just servicing the loan. And that's how you end up in situations like this where 10 years you might have been paying off your loan, but you still have half the loan left to go and you've paid almost double the amount already. You know, like it's such an unfortunate situation where people end up like this because like you said, they just don't know and there's no one there to teach them and people will willingly sign you up for loans and take advantage of your lack of understanding.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing though, like I feel like even at that point, I was going to say, I wish like on those student loan servicers like websites, they would give you like, if you pay this amount per month, here's how long it's going to take you to pay off your loans. Here's how much interest you're going to pay, you know, every single month or, you know, over the life of the loan or whatever. Cause I think that'd be more realistic because like you said, we don't understand how the compounding interest works and it's just not good. But again, at 18, I don't know if you really care because you're like, oh, you know, you have parents telling you it's going to go away, or you have other people saying like, that's normal. You know, everyone has student loans, like just go with it, go with the flow, do what you want. You only live once, you got to have the college experience, you know, whatever they say about that. But yeah, this is a really hard situation. And I feel bad because it's been over 10 years and this person is now in their 30s. And, you know, is saying like, I'm trying to pay this off, but I wish I would have known because I would have chosen differently. But you know, all they can do is accept it. And obviously they're going to teach their children and probably teach younger people about this type of stuff too. Like, you know, like I did with my niece, like walking her through how to, you know, come out of school with the least amount of student loan debt because it's literally hindering the next stages of your life. So I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where you have to just accept it. You know, it's a mistake, whatever that's the information you had at the time. So that's what you took. Right. And you want to trust people that you're, you know, like your mom. So I don't know. And then move forward from there.
Yeah, I think for anyone who's stuck in situations similar to this, whether it's student loans, a car loan, credit cards or whatever, like take that amount and figure out, and you should be able to call. Like I know for credit cards specifically, they'll show you like, all right, here's how many years it's going to take you to pay off. And if you pay this amount extra, here's how much it could shorten it by. But that's in the statement. And yeah, they send you the statement. No one opens up the credit card statement or their bank statements. Like no one looks at that. They just look at what's due inside of their account or their transactions and stuff like that. I would encourage people to look at that amount. All right, if I pay, you know, $200 more, and there's calculators online you can plug this stuff into, super easy to use. If I pay, you know, $100, $200, $300 more, how much does that actually shorten the life of the loan? And what I always tell people is like, if you're going to pay more on a loan, you should do it to a point where, you know, obviously this is going to depend on if you're able to, but in my mind, the minimum amount you should pay extra on a loan is what's going to make a meaningful difference. You know, like I don't want to just pay an amount that's, you know, off a 10-year loan that's going to knock it down to 9 years. To me, that's almost meaningless. Like I'd rather see you knock off 3, 4, 5 years off that loan. And so let's find the amount extra that you need to pay. Otherwise, you might as well just keep making the minimums and put your money somewhere else.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, when they have these big student loan balances and they know that they have to put a lot of money towards it to actually make a difference, that's when they're just kind of like, I don't care. You know, I think I know a lot of people like that, that are just kind of like, I'm going to live my life. I'm not going to let this, you know, affect me, even though it does affect them. It's always kind of in the back of their head, but you know, they just have to make a decision. Like you're either going to put some of your money towards it or you're just not going to, and you're just going to accept that sort of like stress is going to be on your shoulders for many more years, you know? Yeah.
Lauren, question for you. I don't know if this was true in your college experience, but in mine, I remember specifically, there was like this general vibe of like, you know, like, don't worry about what you're going to do after school. Don't worry about like what the career is going to look like. Worry about like your classes and having your experience in college. And like, I remember specifically like one of my friends and, at the time was like kind of just ranting about how their parents were like, you know, really on them about like, hey, you need to make sure you get an internship so that way you can start applying in your, you know, in your 3rd and 4th year for jobs and stuff. And one of my other friends was like, oh, like how dare them ask you about that? Like we're so young, like they want you to like map out your whole life and stuff. I'm like, and looking back on that, I'm like, oh my God, like that was such a wild response to have.
Yeah, I think it's good in some sense, and other times it's not. So like, for example, I think there's a lot of, I felt the pressure in college to be like, pick this major. Do I want to be a teacher? Do I want to do this? Like X, Y, Z, like this major will get you to this career. Yeah. I felt a lot of pressure in that sense. So like, I feel like choosing a more broad major, like I am doing something like in my career that I never thought I would actually, didn't even know it was a job back in the day. You know what I mean? So I did think it was good in that sense. However, I do wish I would have taken like an internship and maybe got some like professional experience that way, because I've sort of, my career's been like really wavy. But yeah, it is sort of, I feel like it is still that way. I had a career in higher education for a while as an academic advisor, and that is sort of, you know, when they don't know what they want to do, like, you know, that's sort of the advice you have to give from the education perspective. But yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move into the last one that we have for today. So this person wrote, I learned the hard way that you can't outgamble your losses. Losing isn't the problem with gambling. If you lost every time, you wouldn't gamble anymore. Winning is the real problem. The more you win, the more you increase your stakes. You win some, you lose some, no big deal. I went to a casino once with $2 and came out with over $500. The next day, I went in with $150 and ended up in hundreds of dollars of debt. It's a brutal cycle where the money you make will not be enough to make long-term changes in your life, and you'll end up losing more in the next round anyway. My income disappears at the casino, and I'm left with nothing to pay my bills. Over the last several years, I've racked up thousands of dollars in credit card debt to keep this going. I don't even know how to turn this around anymore.
What's those billboards out there that are always like, if you have a gambling addiction, call 1-800, whatever. This is really what
That's the number.
No, is it really? Okay. Whatever. I didn't know that was for real. But I mean, at this point, it is like an addiction for them. You know, they're so deeply in debt, but they can't see. Like you and I can see that the issue is stop going. Stop going there. You cannot go in there. That's just like, go if you're a drug addict, that's like going to a corner to where you would buy your stuff. You know what I mean? Like you just can't go there. I think that's the biggest thing with this, and especially gambling. It's like the highs are high, but the lows are really, really low, you know? Yeah. But first thing you got to do is get help. And that is probably going to come from some type of therapy or some type of support group, because it's a real addiction. And actually, because you're not addicted to like a substance, I actually feel like people don't think it's as big of a deal as it is, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And I always talk about this, but you see that in sports betting. Like sports betting is such a huge market now, and like it's almost like the cool new fun thing to do that people do. And I'm like, dude, that can like ruin lives so quickly. Any form of like gambling where you get really sunken into it, you know, it's just hard. But like you said, it's not one of those types of addictions to where you can visually see the toll it starts to take on someone after years and years. This, like, people could hide this for a long time, and they only ever stop once they start losing access to continuing to go. Right? Like they can't open another credit card. They don't have any more money in savings. They've drained all their retirement. That's when they start to see it's a problem, you know, versus with some of those, you know, other forms of addiction. It's like, it's a problem once I end up in the hospital or I get arrested for something or whatever it is, you know. But yeah, I really liked this one because it kind of shows you into the mind of how someone like this thinks. It's not about, you know, the losing isn't the part that's hard. It's the winning, because that's what keeps you coming back again and again.
Yeah, and they've racked up so much debt that they're probably like, if I can just hit it big one time, I'll pay this off and I won't go back. And it's like, no, you're not going to do that. Like you're just, you win big and you're like, ooh, I could double my money. And then I'd be in a really good financial situation. But at that time, you then lose all of your money and now you're even in a worse situation. So yeah, this is a really hard one, but I think this is a lot more to do with like mental health and addressing that first before like tackling the money side of things. I think that's probably going to be the best bet. And I'm guessing, I would assume there's not like Narcotics Anonymous or Alcohol Anonymous, but there's got to be something for like gambling addiction or something like that, where you can have, I don't know about this stuff, but I'm guessing there's something like that out there, some type of support group where you could have somebody that like you call if you're like getting ready to drive over to the casino. You could probably take a really
sponsor.
Yeah. You could probably take like a really drastic step too. Like you said, get rid of credit cards and stuff like that. That's, you know, whatever. But, you know, having like the casino be like, please don't let me in here. Like, I cannot come in here again.
I don't know. They're going to be like, oh, sure, buddy.
Yeah.
What you really got to do is you got to go in there and cause some sort of scene in a moment where you're feeling really strong. Yeah. And then they ban you from it. And you do that to all the local casinos. But
and then you get arrested and so you're in jail. And then you can't go back.
Then you can't go back. So you mentioned like support groups. And this is not might have to cut this from the episode, but you mentioned support groups, and I was thinking like, oh, like Alcoholics Anonymous, and like, you know, they give you like your 10-day sober chip or your 15-day sober chip. I'm like, they probably use something different for Gamblers Anonymous, and they probably don't use chips because they're like, it's probably not the best. I don't know where I was going with that, but
No, I mean, this is a hard one too, because like you said, it's kind of like you said, it's not like, it's like the sports betting. It's like the pornography addiction. Like, it doesn't really hurt. I mean, this can hurt families, obviously. If you have a family, you're deeply in debt. Pornography is the same thing. Like, you're hurting the ones you love, but it's not like you're hurting yourself in a way that like you can't show up to your job and be normal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's the hardest thing with these.
Yeah. And I mean, the only way this person can start to turn the situation around is if they find a way to channel, like, because, you know, I think regardless of what someone is addicted to, if they can easily get addicted to something that's bad for them, whatever it is, they have to recognize they have an addictive personality where it's easy for them to latch onto something. And, you know, this might not be the best advice. I'm no mental health expert, but find something productive to latch your addictive personality onto. And I know for a lot of people, it's like who have had addictions to drugs or alcohol or gambling, it's like, can you get into the gym and start becoming almost like, you know, almost like addicted to going to the gym or something or whatever it is, like addicted to starting to run or to what, you know, something else to where you can spend your time and you can still like in you know, quote unquote, indulge your addictive personality into something that's not going to be a detriment to your life. I don't know. In my mind, that's like the only advice I could give is like, that's, you know, if you have an addictive personality, I don't think that part of you is ever going to go away. So how can we start to channel that into something that's not going to wreck your finances or wreck your health or whatever it is?
Yeah. And I think in addition to that, I totally agree. I also think like self-acceptance, like understanding that like, yeah, this was not, you didn't start this, like you didn't start gambling with the intention to have a full-blown gambling addiction. You didn't start this to get thousands of dollars in credit card debt, but you are where you're at right now. So it's like, and the thing is, you know that you can't get yourself out of it. So you just need to stop and accept where you're at, you know, give yourself some compassion and just know like you didn't get into all of this overnight. So like I say this all the time, you didn't get into it overnight. You're not going to get out of it overnight. So like take some time and just understand that like every time you're paying off those credit cards, like that's going to be like a little pain in your side to be like, okay, yep, that's, I don't want to be doing that anymore. You know what I mean? So I think that's all, it's like a learning lesson in this, you know, I don't think it has to be, it's not gonna be fun to pay this off, but it also wasn't fun with your sitting at the casino because you're not having a great time there, you know? So I don't know. I think there's a lot around this, but you know, self-acceptance is a big part of it, as well as like mental health, you know, seeking the assistance for the addictive personality and tendencies that you have.
100%. I think that was the perfect place to end it. A big takeaway from today is like set up boundaries, have good communication, and know your limits. Basically, know when you have to, know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Right, Lauren?
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, if you enjoyed today's episode, you got a good laugh out of it, the best way you can help us grow is by considering to subscribe and sharing this with a friend.
Yeah, and if you want to have your money question answered on the show, you can visit our website, justanothermoneypodcast.com, and click the submit a question button. And don't forget to join us for another episode of Just Another Money Podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.